On the night of the 20th of July 1916, the same night of the disastrous Fromelles battle, the 1st Australian Battalions of the 1st Division come forward into the trenches from which they would eventually attack Pozieres in the early hours of the 23rd of July. We will journey along the same route taken by the men from their billets in villages around Albert. These are the roads that the men marched along from their billets to the north and west of the town. By 1916, much of this area would have been showing damage from German artillery. They continued left towards the town square and the Basilica. Passing the Basilica with its famous leaning Virgin Mary holding baby Christ aloft. About 50,000 Australian soldiers took part in the Battle of Pozieres. All would have come through and known Albert and its cathedral. As the war progressed, this whole area around the cathedral was wrecked. The British fastened chains to the statue so it would not fall, but in 1918, during the offensive, the British bombed the cathedral and the statue fell, never to be seen again. Soldiers were superstitious and they wrote of it in their diaries and letters back home. The Australian soldiers called the statue Fanny Chirac, as it resembled the Australian swimmer diving off the blocks. During the war, it's estimated that over 2,000 artillery shells hit the Basilica. It was rebuilt in the same style between 1926 and 1931. The Museum Somme 1916 is located at the side of the cathedral. From here, the Australian soldiers marched along the D929 road as far as Tara Hill, and then into the protection of Sausage Valley. Before going there, I just wanted to show you the location of a well-known photograph which shows Australian doctors working on the wounds of Australian soldiers injured at Pozieres. This route was also another way into Sausage Valley. The photo was taken in the chapel on the left. The field ambulance of the 2nd Australian Division was located here during the battle. The chateau was totally destroyed and rebuilt, not in the same style, but it appears that the chapel only needed repair. A little over a kilometre away is the Lochnagar mine crater. On the first day of the Battle of the Somme, 1st July 1916, the British blew up a mine which was under the German front line here. Here we are on the back fence of the Lochnagar mine, looking back to where we have just come. The start of the Sausage Valley is to the left. Due to the mine explosion, this area was captured by the British on the very first day, the 1st July 1916, of the Somme battle. It was one of the few successes on that day. This was the bloodiest day in British military history, with just under 20,000 dying on that first day. This took place 19 days before the Australians arrived here. By this time, the front line had advanced to just below Pozieres. When the Australians were coming in and out of the lines at Pozieres, the fields before you and Avoca Valley were sometimes used as temporary bivouac areas. Often the Australians would come across Tara Hill, down Avoca Valley, and into the start of Sausage Valley on the left. All the Australian battalions coming forward to the battlefields of Pozieres would come up the D929 and then leave it around Tara Hill or La Brazelle. Tara Hill is often referred to in Australian battalion histories and remembered by diggers. Tara Hill is not so high. To illustrate this, we will play this drive cam video through La Brazelle. It's worth remembering the Tyneside Scottish Brigade that suffered devastating casualties right here, with 6,000 odd men being killed in these fields on the first day. Their memorial is just to the left. The road to the left is to the Grand Crater, or Lochnagar. As you can see, it would be very easy to miss Tara Hill. Usna Hill just seems to be in a continuation of the same ridge to the right. Back then, they were very important positions to the Australians. Tara Hill was also a major site for Australian heavy artillery batteries. Australians often suffered casualties at Tara Hill from German long-range shelling. The 9th was one of the first Australian battalions to arrive at Tara Hill and Sausage Valley at 2 a.m. on the 20th of July. As a welcome, they experienced their first gas shelling. The road to Lochnagar is close to representing where the German trench was located on the 1st July 1916. 3 mines were blown up in this area. The other 2 were called Y-Sap, located on the other side of D929, and the Glory Hole, which is also preserved just down the road. After the war, Y-Sap was filled in completely. This post-war photo is taken very close to the D929, looking towards Y-Sap crater, showing also that there was nothing left of La Brazelle. Lochnagar is the largest man-made mine crater on the Western Front. It measures up to 100 metres wide and 21 metres deep, the result of detonating 27 tonnes of explosives. It is the only mine crater on the Western Front that is preserved and publicly accessible. In 1974, Y-Sap crater was filled in, and the same fate would have happened here, except the site was purchased in 1978 by Englishman Richard Dunning to preserve it as a memorial. Richard Dunning recently said that while reading The Old Front Line by John Mansfield, for some reason when he came to the few lines about the crater, the hairs stood up on the back of his neck. Within a day he had travelled 4,000 miles to view the deserted crater. When arriving at the crater, one cannot see the immensity of it. This is only revealed after approaching the rim. Around the outside of the crater are plaques which commemorate important people and facts about the location. Don't miss to visit the souvenir stall on the opposite side of the road to the entry. Truly fascinating memorabilia at very reasonable prices. My guess is the man would have an endless supply of museum quality artefacts, digging up a small part of any of the old trenches. Okay, we are back in the air and looking directly down Sausage Valley towards Pozieres. A 13th Battalion digger said of Sausage Valley, "The guns were massed row on row, wheel to wheel, for hundreds of yards, and the perpetual streams of vehicles of all kinds carrying forward food for men and guns, and protective material, thousands of tons, and bringing back nothing except broken men. Sausage Valley was half a mile long and 400 yards wide, with Contalmaison Road running across the head of the valley." Richard Roberts of the 3rd Battalion said of the area, "Unexploded shells, debris, equipment were everywhere. Among the shell craters and in the mouths of the smashed dugouts were the corpses." A light trench railway ran down the base of the valley to Gordon's Dump, which was located adjacent to Gordon Dump Cemetery. 50,000 Australians come through here during the battle. 6,700 never returned. During the war, the cemetery fronted the old road and tramway, which was located down in the gully. In this old photo you can see the aspect from the tramway and the road. 95 Australian soldiers were initially buried here during the battle. Many were artillerymen whose guns were located all around this cemetery. 19-year-old George Hunt from Mossman, New South Wales, served with the 17th Battalion. His brother Alfred, who also served with the 17th Battalion, witnessed his death. After his brother's death, Alfred transferred to the Royal Flying Corps, only to be killed in an air crash in 1917. Just one of the thousands of stories of these men. These 3 men were part of the 21st Field Artillery Howitzer at Gordon's Dump. An ammunition driver remembered the scene. He had just delivered ammunition to their battery and was on his horse leaving. The boys were having a rest drinking coffee behind their gun when a German 5.9 shell exploded close by, killing all of them. Alan Mercer's grave of the 6th Field Artillery Brigade. This epitaph caught my eye. The words are from Lycidas, and I wondered what it meant. Refers to premature death before reaching their full potential, and that fame is not something that naturally grows on earth, but is bestowed by God in heaven. Right next door is another strange epitaph. The epitaph reads, Anzac ex-First Field Engineers, an Australian Gallipoli unit, but the grave is to a British Royal Field Artillery officer. Reading between the lines of his war record, it seems he became disillusioned with being a driver for the AIF and transferred, gaining a commission with the Royal Field Artillery. The next grave is a member of a family that we all know in Australia. In 1914, George, known as G.J. Coles, and Jim and another brother formed a partnership and opened their first shop in Collingwood with the slogan, "Nothing over a shilling." During World War I, all three brothers joined the AIF, leaving the store in the care of their uncle. Jim and another brother, David, were killed during the conflict. A company of the 9th Battalion led the Australians into the Pozières trenches in the very early morning of July 20th. Around the same time, elements of the 1st Pioneer Battalion had come forward to survey the trenches. Initially, the 9th Battalion come into the Black Watch trenches, marked by the yellow dots. The 9th Battalion started to attack to force the line on the OG1. These early attacks were not dramatically successful. As more Australian battalions were arriving for a major attack planned for the 23rd of July, the Germans set their artillery on the troop movement routes like Casualty Corner and around the Contalmaison road. This is Casualty Corner today. Depending on where troops were going, there was two protective routes to Pozieres battlefields: the notorious Deadman's Road to the right, or Contalmaison Road. After the 24th of July, all traffic went straight up Deadman's Road, the more direct route to Pozieres. Charles Bean wrote of this area, "The road past Casualty Corner to Contalmaison was intermittently swept with shrapnel and high explosive and drenched with phosgene gas shells. At times the corner could only be passed by men running one at a time. Those who were hit had to crawl away from the place as best they could, their mates having at that moment one paramount duty: to reach their starting point for the attack." When walking through Bailiff Forest, one seems to see shell holes. Troops going towards the 23rd of July attack jump-off trenches went across under the protection of the small valley to the left. This way, near the ridge line, they would run into the Black Watch Alley trench. Now looking back down towards Deadman's Road, to which we are now returning to find the chalk pit. For the initial attack on the 23rd of July, I should have said all troops went up Contalmaison Road except the 2nd, 4th and 8th Battalions, who turned here and come up Deadman's Road to the lines above the chalk pit. This area between this track and Contalmaison Road had been established as an aid post, hence the name Casualty Corner. This track gave some protection as they made their way up past the chalk pit. Charles Bean said of this track, "You strike the dead on Chalk Pit Road. There were only blackened dead and occasionally bits of men, torn bits of limbs, unrecognisable along it." A week later, the track had earned the name Deadman's Road because both sides of the road were lined with dead Tommies and Australians. Probably made by the Australian engineers sometime after the initial attack, as the construction is quite elaborate with brick and concrete. It may have functioned as a battalion headquarters. There are probably several of these existing in the area of the chalk pit. Deadman's Road continues on. There's probably more dugouts on the right hand side here, because this area was pretty full of battalion headquarters, etc. So who would know what's in the the singing nettle there? It's hard to tell whether these tracks lead to something to do with military or just farmers' tracks. Can't see anything there. Okay, we have made it to the chalk pit. It's a lot further up Deadman's Road than what I would have thought. First indications is that it is as though it is being used as a dump, which is a pity. The sign basically says is that it's a protected historical site and prior request to the town hall is required for entry. The lock gate won't stop the drone, but before I fly it, we'll just go up this road a little further to see where the 2nd Battalion's jumping off trench was located on the 23rd of July. As you can see, the road rises quite sharply ahead, so I think it's around this position where the 2nd Battalion's jump-off trench was. The 4th Battalion was to move off from the same trench 1 hour later to take the 3rd objective. The photo appears to me to be taken well after the period before the first attack on the 23rd of July. Of course, during the war, the forests like Bailiff and Contalmaison woods were destroyed remnants of what you see here today. It mentioned in Beans, I think, that the last green country in World War I was back at Tara Hill. The drone reveals that the chalk pit is a lot larger than what it appears from the track. Most parts are overgrown with blackberry. Due to its obvious protection, the chalk pit was a hive of dugouts, aid posts, supply ammunition dumps, food kitchens, in-transit soldiers, bivouacked reserve troops, and various headquarter units. Back then, it was only this portion of Chalk Pit Road that was called Deadman's Road. Also in 1916, many Australians called Sausage Valley Sausage Gully. The first waves of the 2nd Battalion would attack the first objective, the Red Line, at 12:30 am exactly, followed an hour later by the 4th Battalion passing through the 2nd to attack the 3rd objective. The first objective was the taking of the German Pozieres trench, Red Line. The second objective was the backyard orchards, green dashed line, and the third was the southern side of the D929 yellow dotted line. On the right, as soon as the sunken road trench was completed, it was occupied by the Australian battalions. The numbers represent the battalion that had occupied the portion of the Australian jumping off trench. That is the blue line. The first number is the battalion that advanced initially, and the second number is the battalion that went over about an hour after the first. At 12:30 am on the 23rd of July, exactly according to plan, the assault went in. Such had been the ferocity and length of the bombardment that it was difficult for the Australians to distinguish formal trenches from the multitude of shell holes and small craters. As the first waves moved out from positions, often in front of the formal starting trenches, little resistance was encountered. The first objectives were taken, and the following waves were able to pass through, ready to continue the attack. On the extreme right, in the vicinity of OG1 and OG2, the success was more limited, and a series of bloody actions took place. We are now situated on the D73 at the extreme right flank of the 9th Battalion sector. The track to the left marks the sunken road trench, and where the photo is taken, on the bitumen road, is in the middle of OG1 and OG2. In the advance on the 23rd of July, an attacking party led by Lieutenant Monteith went from here up the OG1 to the junction of Pozieres Trench, marked here with the arrow. Here they found the Pozieres Trench to be empty, but just a little further up the trench, come under fire from machine guns and Germans throwing grenades. It was then that John Leake jumped out of the trench, ran forward throwing bombs and annihilating the German crew. For his action, Leake was awarded the Victoria Cross, and Monteith a military cross for his conspicuous gallantry leading a valiant attack on 2 consecutive nights. As dawn broke in the same area, the 10th Battalion's Arthur Blackburn performed acts of gallantry that also earned him the Victoria Cross. Looking down the sunken road, it looks like the same flat, featureless farmland continues, but it drops into a valley where there are 2 cemeteries. It was completely hidden from the Germans. This is the reason why the slope was selected for the sunken road trench. We are now on the D147 and parked just down the road from where the Pozieres Trench intersects the road. On this side of the road, the 4th and the 2nd Battalions advanced. It's interesting to note that one cannot see anything of the sunken road valley. And on this side, the 1st and 3rd Battalions. By around 2 am in the morning, the advance was successful in taking the 3rd objective along the D929 roadside. Only on the right flank, OG1 and OG2 remained uncaptured. The men had started to make local assaults to the other side of the road. By this time the German shelling had stopped, but was concentrating on the Contalmaison causeway and Deadman's road. As the day broke on the extreme left flank, the 2nd Battalion noticed a concrete structure 10 feet high. We are now crossing the D929 to the top of Deadman's Road. The 2nd Battalion men would have made their observation of the concrete structure from the ground on the left behind the sign. One of its officers, Walter Waterhouse, observed a German entering it. Waterhouse and 10 men were sent to take the blockhouse, which had become known as Gibraltar. All the occupants surrendered. It was found that the concrete covered an entrance to a large cellar, from which a stairway led down to a second and deeper chamber. Apparently, the place had been used as an observation post. The men recovered 2 rangefinders, a large number of field glasses, 4 machine guns, 2 kettle drums, and a number of revolvers, helmets, telephones, and other military gear. Waterhouse was awarded the Military Cross for his gallantry on that day. The concrete tower was exceedingly strong and continued to stand practically undamaged after every trace of the house itself had been utterly blown away. After the war, the upper part of the structure was demolished, leaving only the cellar and basement areas. Just over the road is the Australian 1st Division Memorial. Each division on the Western Front has a memorial dedicated to the men. The 1st Division decided that Pozieres was the best location for its memorial, with the original being erected in 1917 and was later replaced with the current stone obelisk around 1920. The 1st Division suffered 5,285 casualties during the Battle of Pozieres. Although the 1st Division's losses were catastrophic, they would be surpassed in coming weeks by the 2nd Division and 4th Division's losses at Pozieres. The 8th Battalion come past here when they entered the Pozieres village at 11 p.m. on the 24th of July. During the morning they attacked northwards, past the church and towards the cemetery. A deadly German artillery bombardment of the Australian front lines in Pozieres continued. D Company of the 8th Battalion achieved its objective by 5 a.m. on the 25th of July, 50 yards past the cemetery. A bombing party of the 4th Battalion pushed the Germans in K Trench towards the 8th Battalion position, trapping the Germans in between the 2 battalions. During this action, it was necessary for Private Thomas Cooke to take his Lewis gun and team to a dangerous part of the line on the right near an orchard. His team was gradually killed until he alone remained, continuing to fire until he was also killed. For determination and devotion to duty, Cooke was awarded the Victoria Cross. We are now at the Pozières cemetery, behind which was K Trench, where the Germans were trapped between the 4th and 8th Battalions. Cooke's VC action and last stand occurred in the vicinity of the Star. Early morning on the 25th of July, on the southern right flank, an attack was underway to finally capture that part of OG1 and 2 which continued to remain in German hands. This was the same strong point that the 9th attacked on the very first day, and Leake was awarded the VC for attacking. As the 5th Battalion surveyed the remnants of OG2, they were surprised to see Germans moving along OG1 from the direction of the main road, and flares rising from Munster Alley. To avoid being cut off, they withdrew to OG1, where a desperate bomb fight ensued. The drawing depicts the moment when William Pennycook, while courageously flinging grenades, is shot through the neck and killed. This is the scene today where much death and gallant action took place in 1916. The clean, neatly ploughed fields are in direct contrast to the chaos of 1916. By the 26th of July, the 1st Division was being relieved as the constant shelling had taken a great toll on the men. Shell-shocked men were in epidemic proportions. The 11th Battalion alone suffered 529 casualties. Like all battalions, the 12th's official history book states that the greatest amount of casualties were by shelling. One shell had landed on their company headquarters, killing and wounding many officers including Charles Lucas and Percy Nichols. A hero of the 12th, Ivor Margetts, was killed by shrapnel close to the tramway, his lone grave standing stark amongst the shell holes. Books we used to obtain information from were The Anzacs on the Western Front by Peter Pedersen, the #1 Australian Battlefield Guide. Pen and Sword's publication of Pozieres is great for the maps and the British story. I guess nothing could be done without Charles Bean's Official History, Volume 3. The amount of detail in the Bean's book is quite outstanding. In addition to these books, we consulted several battalion histories, which are all available from Books on War. Pozières by Scott Bennett has many stories not recorded elsewhere. Christopher Wray's Pozières, part of the highly acclaimed Cambridge University's Australian Army History Series.
It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to
The Western Front, an Australian Perspective, quite a large book, has wonderful photography within it.